Amos chapter 2, verse 1. And it says, "Thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Moab, and for 4, I do not turn it back, because he burned the bones of the sovereign of Edom to lime." This pretty much continues what Yahweh was revealing in the previous chapter, but it has been a while, so I'm going to go back for a second. And for instance, you see here, "Thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4, and there were more like that, like right here, "for 3 transgressions of Damasek, and for 4, I do not turn it back," etc. So he's using the same way of speaking when revealing to these nations about the punishment that comes to them because of their transgressions, and how we also see here how Yahweh gives one more than the world, in the sense that he mentions the 3 strikes, but then he says, but because of the 4th, it's too much. And that connects, like I would say, to the 4 letters of the name of Yahweh, to the completion of the sin. When it comes to the wicked, when they come to the 4th, then they receive the punishment for it. Yahweh gives them time to repent, so he allows the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd. And that also connects with the 4 generations through which the curse goes, right? For we know that the generational curse goes all the way to the 4th generation, and then Yahweh cuts it because of his mercy, but it goes to the 4th. In the same way, when we have talked about reincarnation as the scripture reveals it, we see that, and well, also in the Judaism, they explain regarding the 4 generations, how the curse goes to the 4th generation. That also connects with the fact that a soul may be able to come back 3 times after the original. So it will be just like this, but backwards, right? The original, and then 3. And if there is a sin or an issue with each of those times in which that soul came to this reality, then after the 4th, that soul is not able to come back and remains in hell, basically, being punished or being discarded, in the sense that those who do come to change, to rectify, to improve, they are allowed to come again and again to this reality, just like the blessings continue for thousands of generations. So we see another connection with this prophecy. Like I said, one, how Yahweh, the name, has 4 letters, how Yahweh creates in 4 levels, how the Torah has 4 levels of interpretation as well. In the negative, how the curse goes all the way to the 4th generation, how in reincarnation there are 4 times in total that a wicked person can come to this reality if it remains wicked, and I mean the soul. And lastly, here how Yahweh allows 3 transgressions, but the 4th basically spills over, and that's when Yahweh has to bring punishment, do something pretty much. So thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Moab. Like I always mention as well, Moab refers to well, connects with Halel, Lucifer, and that is in reference to how there are 3 Satans, Samael, Lucifer, and Azazel. Lucifer and Azazel, they are both children of Samael, just like Moab and Ammon are children of Lot. Lot means covering, like a veil. Obviously, Lot is a righteous one, but because of the name where he came from, well, where he was taken out of, Sodom and Gomorrah, and also the fact that there was incest with his daughters through whom Moab and Ammon came, is that there is also a negative connotation and obviously some negativity in Moab and Ammon, which then, for instance, here we can see. So Moab means of his father, Ammon of his people. Lot means covering, like a veil. Samael has his eyes covered in the sense that he is a blind, mighty one, and he blinds people. He blinds the nations, and spiritually, right? Of course, the blinding. Then comes Halel and Azazel as two different veils, just like I always say. Samael represents the veil on the face of Moshe, and then Halel and Azazel represent the veil at the entrance of the temple and at the entrance of the most set apart place. So all of that to explain how Moab connects to Lucifer. Also, the fact that Yahushua told the Pharisees, "You are of your father," referring to Satan. And Moab means exactly that, of your father, of the father. So thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Moab, and for 4, I do not turn it back, because he burned the bones of the sovereign of Edom to lime. We see here a couple things that actually, well, refer to the same one, and that is that burning a body of a person that has died is pretty much bad. According to the scriptures, they would burn somebody's bones to lime if they wanted to get rid of that person having a connection between the soul and the bones. So they wanted to destroy the bones pretty much to seek to destroy the soul. Is like placing a curse on the person. And that is why Yahweh here says it is the 4th thing for which he got angry. So we see that Yahweh is angry at those who destroy the body in this way. And sadly, that is something that is promoted nowadays. And there are people who actually ask for it, and not knowing that according to scriptures, it is not a good thing. The body should be buried, not burned. So I do not turn it back, because he burned the bones of the sovereign of Edom to lime. And we're talking about the sovereign of Edom, right? Edom was wicked. So it's interesting that even though it will be a wicked nation, still Yahweh punishes the other one for doing this to this king. And we will have to see if this sovereign in particular had something that made him more righteous than the rest in Edom, but it is not mentioned exactly who at the moment. Also, remember that, well, it is said, at least, and we can see some proof of it, that Job was the king, one of the kings of Edom from Bosra. Job was not an Edomite, but as we will see in the book of Yashar, Edomites would get people from other nations to rule over them because they did not trust themselves. They did not trust their own people. So they would get people from other nations to rule over them. So that opens the idea that the sovereign of Edom was not from Edom, and therefore could have something of righteous, right? Something perhaps could be. And I'm just opening the possibility, not saying that that's the case, because of the fact that it was the sovereign of Edom, which it would be like being the sovereign of Rome, right? For Rome came from Edom, and we know Rome has a lot of negativity attached to it when it comes to the emperors that it had. So, because he burned the bones of the sovereign of Edom. But also the reason why I was mentioning all of that is because, like I said, Job, it is said, was the king from Bosra of Edom. Remember that the last, as Isaiah 63 reveals, comes from Edom as a sovereign. And he will be given the authority over the nations, just like Joseph got authority over the nations from Egypt when Egypt was the world empire. and the last is a descendant of Joseph. But see that Joseph said regarding, well, the two dreams that he had, not only would fulfill with him, but also with the last. In fact, with the last is the complete fulfillment of that dream. Yahusef's fulfillment was the parallel to it, the confirmation of what Yahweh would do in the end times through a descendant of Joseph. So the lad would come from Edom. Remember also that Yaakov, to get the blessing, got dressed as Esau or Edom. So that's why the last, how the world would see him. And that's why the connection with Job, the connection with Isaiah 63, and with Joseph. And remember that the false prophet will bring fire from heaven. All points to that fire being brought from heaven to kill the two witnesses, in which case this would also be fulfilled. Because for 3 transgressions of Moab and for 4, for instance, those who are of Satan, represented by Moab, those who follow Lucifer, by that time, for instance, by the time they killed the last, they would have killed or have fulfilled 3 specific transgressions: killing the Messiah, John the Baptist, Yahudah the Immerser, Eliyahu now in this end times, and then the 4th would be the last, right? 2,000 years ago to this time. I do not turn it back for the 4, because he burned, like the false prophet will do, the bones of the sovereign of Edom to lime. Now we will see how much will that fire burn, because we know their bodies will be there. So most likely, or at least so far, I have thought of the fire just coming down to kill them, but not destroying their bodies completely, as it says here, all the way to the bones to lime, right? Not so much, but the fact that they will be burned, it would connect with this, the fact that it connects with Edom and other parts that I already mentioned. And bones will be here, Atzmot, Etzem would be a bone, but bones in plural right here. And it starts with an I. The two witnesses, well, the witness has a connection with seeing, right? The witness testifies of what he saw. The Sadeh refers to the Sadiq, the righteous person. The Mem connects with Mashiach, the water of life. Interestingly enough, Etz right here, that is a tree, and it connects with the cross itself where Mashiach was hanged. For that is the word that appears in the Torah regarding Mashiach being sacrificed on Etz, not necessarily a cross. That's not how it says it. But like I have said, because of Rome and because of the Aleph Bet at the end, the Tav being a cross, I do believe it happened in that shape. But the point is on a tree, on wood. So the two witnesses will be sacrificed. So it refers as well to that tree or cross that Mashiach told us to carry, right? The two witnesses being killed, that's their cross, even if they are not literally hanged from a cross. Because the literal part already happened with Mashiach, the word, right? Now the spiritual part has to happen with the two witnesses. So bones here connect with the tree, the sacrifice, the witnesses who are righteous and testify of Mashiach, he who came to be nailed to the cross. Isn't that interesting? Look at that word, bones in Hebrew. Those who saw and are righteous to testify of Mashiach, who was nailed to a cross. Sadly, you don't see the cross here because this is not the pictographic, but you guys know in the pictographic, this is the eye, the righteous, the water, the nail, the cross. and none of his bones was broken as prophesied. None of his atzmot. Not only that, look at this. If we separate the word here, etz and mot, we have the tree died, or on the tree, he died. Or mavet, which would be the death. On the tree was death. So Mashiach killed death by being sacrificed on an etz. Hopefully that's understood. All right. So I do not turn it back, because he burned the bones of the sovereign of Edom to lime. But I shall send fire upon Moab, and it shall consume the palaces of Kerioth. And Moab shall die amid uproar, with a cry and with the voice of a shofar. This pretty much confirms what we were saying up here. But I shall send a fire upon Moab, those of his father. Remember that Yahushua came as the water, but the last, who comes from Edom as a sovereign, he comes as a fire, the consuming fire, upon those who are of Satan. And it shall consume the palaces of Kerioth, of the cities of the world, which are pretty much connected to Cain, who built the first city. Those who are of the world and like to build cities and make money in them and pretty much consume the world in one way or another through what they end up selling to just make more money and more cities that are more luxurious or whatever. So also remember that Judah's Yahudah ish Kerioth was Yahudah ish Kerioth. Yahudah, a man of Kerioth, and he was of his father Satan. And remember that Kerioth was a city, a place of Edom. That's why I have mentioned how John Hircano, I'm not sure how his last name will be pronounced in English, but he converted those from this place to Judaism, even though they were Edomites. That's one of the reasons it is believed Yahudah ish Kerioth could have been an Edomite as well as Herod, right? So now, but I shall send a fire upon Moab, and it shall consume the palaces of Kerioth, and Moab shall die amid uproar, with a cry and with a voice of shofar. Voice of shofar. Remember, the last comes as the voice. Yahushua is the word, the last is the voice. Yahushua is the water, the last is the fire. The last is Mikael, the voice of shofar, also mentioned by Paul, that he comes to gather his own with the voice of shofar, the voice of the archangel. That archangel being Mikael, mentioned on Daniel 12:1, that he should stand up in the end times for his people. So he comes as the fire, the same fire that came out in the beginning to put Samael in chains, now comes at the end to put Hillel in chains. And he shall consume the palace of Kerioth, the palaces of Kerioth, and Moab shall die amid uproar, with a cry and with a voice of shofar. Like I said, what the last brings. And in Hebrew here it says, now I shall send fire. Veshilachti esh to Moab, or in Moab, and it will consume the palaces of Kerioth. There was something else I wanted to see here. All right, here, just Bekol Shofar, with the voice of Shofar. And I shall cut off the judge from its midst, and kill all its heads with him, said Yahweh. And I shall cut off the judge from its midst, and kill all its heads with him, said Yahweh. So obviously in this reality, as we can see, people do not judge correctly. And I mean, those who are in control, those who lead, for they rejected righteous judgment. They rejected Yahweh, the law, the Torah. So obviously everything will be crooked, twisted when it comes to their judgment. That's why Yahweh reveals here this, just like he was talking about Moab, those of his father, those of Satan. Now he says, and I shall cut off the judge from its midst. Not only those who judge in this reality, but also that angel that judges and accuses, in fact, humans before the judge of all, Yahweh, and kill all its heads with him. Remember that the beast has 7 heads. The beast would be the judge, and his heads with him, those 7 of the beast in Revelation, being one of the 7, the 8th that is healed from its wound. Also, in the sense of the lower or earthly level, we know that the beast will rule, the little horn will rule with other 10, of whom 3 will be cut. So once again, we are left with 7 that rule with him, 7 heads that are the 7 toes left, because there are 10 toes, right? That they are the kings in Daniel, in the book of Daniel. The 10 toes of the statue, they are the leaders that will rule with him. But then when he comes out as the 11, 3 of the first will be plucked out. And in that case, it's talking about horns, but they are the same toes. So yeah, pretty much the beast will lose 3 toes and have another little toe mutant. It says, and I shall cut off the judge from his midst and kill all his heads with him, said Yahweh. It says, thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Yahudah. So now it's talking about the people, and it says Yahudah, but it should be Yahudah. I normally, like I always say, I mention Yahudah when referring to Judas, just to take away the name of the father from it, just like they do when they put it this way. So for 3 transgressions of Yahudah, talking to his own people now, and for 4, I do not turn it back. So this is also important because we see that Yahweh judges the same, those who he called his, Yahudah, the Yahudim, and those who are of the nations, those who are not his, but he created them, so he must judge them. But they don't have a covenant, but still they all go through the same judgment, which shows how fair Yahweh is, right? It is not like he's showing some, like it says the scriptures, that he doesn't do any, well, like I always mention, favoritism wouldn't be the word, in fact, because there is favor through Mashiach that we receive. So it is different than what we know as what some judges do when they get some money or some gift or whatever, and they judge those who are guilty as innocent and those who are innocent as guilty just because one has money or looks a certain way or whatever. So we see here something that a lot of people sadly either miss or do not believe regarding the Father. They don't miss it, or well, they don't know it, whatever it may be. But a lot of people believe that Yahweh is not fair, that he was, in fact, like I always, in this last couple months, I have mentioned, there is a new, it is not new, but it has been receiving attention, a doctrine saying that the mighty one of the Old Testament is actually Satan. So they say that Yahweh is Satan because he killed a lot of people and all of that. Not understanding what judgment and mercy as the old and the new covenant what Yahweh was revealing through history and all of that, not seeing the judgment, the righteousness, or the righteous judgment that he did in the old covenant, the reasons why that would happen. So they just tend to defend those who are wicked because they put themselves in their shoes, showing that they should be punished, sadly. But we see here, as one of many other examples in scriptures, that Yahweh judges all the same way. Those who are of the nations, because he created them, he has the right. And those who are his, those whom he chose, the Yahudim. It is not like he told Moab, for 2 transgressions, I will bring punishment. And now Yahudim, for 7 transgressions, I will bring punishment. He's saying exactly the same words. So for 3 transgressions of Yahudah and for 4, I do not turn it back, because they have rejected the Torah of Yahweh. Because they have rejected the Torah of Yahweh, which is pretty much what I was saying regarding why there is, well, there are such wicked judgments in the world. Judges that do everything that is opposite to true justice. And it is because they have rejected Yahweh and his Torah. Look how Yahweh didn't mention this to the other nations, because the other nations did not make a covenant with him. So Yahweh is not telling them, because you broke the Torah. He's not telling them that. He's telling them what they did, that they know in their hearts is wrong, reason why they should be punished. But now with the Yahudim, they promised to follow the Torah, but they didn't. So because they have rejected the Torah of Yahweh, and look, the word that he uses, rejected, after accepting the Torah, now they rejected it. In a way, just like the congregation is the bride of Yahweh, the Torah is like a bride of the nation, right? The nation made a covenant with the Torah to follow it, to respect it, to honor it, to do what it says. But then they rejected it, like rejecting a wife without her having done anything, right? Being actually perfect. No reason to reject the Torah. Yet the people did it. Not only, like, my point is that it is not like they just forgot about it. They stopped doing some of it. No, they rejected it. So they saw it as bad, because you reject that which you don't like. That's that which you think will be bad for you. That's how it should be. But this world offers a lot of things that are bad, yet look or feel good, while other things that are good and necessary don't look that good. So, and sometimes don't feel that good either. So that makes it hard for those who live in the flesh, in feeling, like in a world of feelings and a world of emotions. They get stuck in that which may look and feel good, but is bad. So for 3 transgressions of Yahudah and for 4, I do not turn it back, because they have rejected the Torah of Yahweh and did not guard his laws. And their lies, after which their fathers walked, led them astray. Just like the apostasy of the past 2,000 years, which our fathers taught us. Some of them, well, most of them, in fact, without even they themselves knowing what they were doing, what they were believing, teaching us, etc. So, and their lies, after which their fathers walked, led them astray, just like the apostasy of the past 2,000 years. But I shall send fire upon Yahudah, and it shall consume the palaces of Jerusalem. So we see here that Yahweh will send a fire not only to Moab, but also upon Yahudah. It's interesting also, and that connect with the end times. Well, the whole book of Amos has to do with the punishment of the end times. Obviously, there was in a certain level, a fulfillment of this book in the time of Amos or right after him. But it was all as a confirmation of what would happen in our time, the end times, that is prophesied here. For instance, one of the main prophecies of the book of Amos that clearly shows that it refers to the end times is the famine that would happen, and we see in Revelation 6 during the third seal. The opening of the third seal will bring famine. That famine is mentioned in the book of Amos. So the rest of the book of Amos has to do with the book of Revelation, with the time in which most of the book of Revelation will fulfill, our time. And we see that the judgment not only comes for the nations, but also for the Yahudim. In fact, we see that he just started with the nations and then comes to the Yahudim, which in a way will happen with the two witnesses, for they will come from the nations, speak to the nations, end up in Yahudah, where they will be killed in Jerusalem. So we see pretty much the same order. But I shall send fire upon Yahudah. The same fire that went through Moab now will come to Yahudah, and it shall consume the palaces of Jerusalem. That's verse 5. Thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Israel. So it goes from the Yahudim to the Israelim. As we know, that means those of the south and those of the north, the 2 separations of the people of Yahweh, the few and the many, what they represent in general. But here it's talking about those who will be punished. So it's not talking about the few. It's talking about, when it comes to the Yahudim, those who rejected Mashiach and are descendants of Yahudah, but still in our time reject him as Mashiach and therefore claim to be Jews. Now Israelites refers to those who have been within the nations and claim to be Christians or something similar, pretty much the many, or most of the many, or what I mention always as the many. So thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Israel, and for 4 I do not turn it back. And once again, kind of going back to what I was mentioning in the first verse, but adding a little bit to it. Look how when he says, for 3 transgressions of Israel, and for 4 I do not turn it back. So that means if they would not have come to the 4th, Yahweh would have turned back the punishment. There was a possibility if they would have repented after the 1st. If they did it again but repented, then do it again and repented, Yahweh would still turn it back. But after doing a 4th, even if there was repentance, the punishment would come. So, and for 4, I do not turn it back. So for 3, for 2, for 1, he would turn it back, because that's how merciful he is. The sad thing about it is that those who are pretty much wicked, those who will end up with the tares, if they do something bad and they repent or have something remorse, something similar to repentance, Yahweh will turn it back because of his mercy. But then the evil one, the person who has that inclination, I mean, all humans have the inclination to evil, but my point is, there's a difference, a clear difference between the righteous and those who aren't. So those who aren't, normally, after a while of not seeing the punishment that Yahweh stopped because of their remorse, because of their prayer or whatever they did, they tend to forget the fear that they had. They tend to forget because of the flesh. So that also tends to happen to everybody, to forget what they did, what they were going to get, how fearful they were. So all of a sudden they feel like they can do it again, or worse, the enemy pretty much fools them to think nothing will happen, because nothing happened that other time. Nothing will happen this time. So then they do it a second time, and then they do it a third time. By the 4th, it won't turn back. And it will be too late, of course. So it says here, because they sell the righteous for silver and the poor for a pair of sandals. How sad. And this is interesting for several reasons. One, confirms what I was saying. Let me go back to the Yahudim. Yahweh is angry at the Yahudim because they rejected the Torah of Yahweh. Yahushua came to fulfill the Torah, and they rejected him. Like I said, those who claim to be Jews and are descendants of the Yahudim, those who reject Mashiach still, they fulfilled this part of the chapter, verse 4 in chapter 2 of Amos. They rejected the true Torah because the Torah told them to expect Mashiach, and when he came, they killed him, and they still hate him and claim he's a false prophet and a bunch of other things, when he is the fulfillment of the Torah. They rejected the Torah when they follow the commandments of men who claim to be the commandments of Yahweh, the commandments of men, which are the wrong interpretation of the law, the wrong interpretation of the letter of the Torah, because they have rejected the Torah of Yahweh and did not guard his laws. As the Yahudim, that's what they should have done, and teach others to do so. So like I said, like the Jewish people of nowadays who are actually Israelites in the flesh. What I mean is that those who are not true Israelites in the flesh, but claim to be Jews, are something else, and they need to convert to Mashiach as well, but they will enter differently because of the fact that they are of the nations. And my point is that obviously those who are leaders of Jewish people and know they are not Israelites, but claim they are, obviously they are lying, so they are sinning just through that. So they should repent even of that. And we know through Yahushua, the nations and the Israelites become one. So that's the blessing in Yahushua. But they themselves, who claim to be Jewish, are doing a lot of bad to a lot of believers in Mashiach, because a lot of believers in Mashiach are turning to lies that they teach, thinking that they are the true Israelites, and therefore that they should pretty much almost worship them, misinterpreting some of the verses of scriptures. So look at what it says to the Israelites now, which, like I said, mainly refers to the many who are Israelites but don't know it. So they call themselves Christians who happen to be Gentiles. So thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Israel and for 4 I did not turn back, because they sell the righteous for silver. How interesting. One thing about the many is that they do like their money, and they follow the doctrine of prosperity. So they tend to sell everything they can for money. And the poor for a pair of sandals. They also tend to dismiss the poor, even in churches where poor people go to. There are churches where they separate the rich from the poor in one way or another, through their treatment, through their even separations, like there are places where they almost have a VIP type of thing, based on money, not on deeds, right? As it should be. If there's going to be a separation, it should be on deeds, on the way you act, on the way you purify yourself, and how much you know, and all of that. So like I don't know if you've seen, but there's a woman, I forget her name. She is a pastor. She claims to be so. I think also claims to be a prophet, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm forgetting the name, but there's a video where she's telling people to come and leave their money, and even like if they don't have money but they have a title of a lot, right? If they have some land, or if they have a car or anything, they can come and leave it here or there. And then she says, or here's the line for those who have going to give 100, those who are going to give less than 100 over here, those who are going to give more than 100 over there. So that's clearly showing separation through money. And she even says, like, to somebody, she's like, no, that's worth nothing, because somebody gave like a check or something. That's worth nothing. Why are you bringing this? You're dishonoring the father. Blah, blah, blah. So then the person says something like, no, but I signed it on the back or something like that. And she's like, oh, okay, that's fine. Thank you. Right. So it's so amazing, like, to see that. And that's just one example of many out there. But also this verse is interesting and prophetical, because remember that it was the brothers of Joseph, the Israelites, who decided to sell him for some money. Him who was righteous, Joseph, for some silver. It is written in Genesis, 20 pieces of silver. In the testament of the Yahudim, of the Israelites, it is said that it was 30 pieces of silver, but 2 of them kept 10 pieces of silver for themselves and divided the 20 among their brothers. So it would have been 30 pieces of silver, just like when they sold Mashiach, when Yahudah sold Mashiach. In this case, Yahudah was the one who wanted to sell Joseph to save him from death. So in that time with Joseph, he decided to sell him instead of killing him. So Yahudah was trying to do something good at that moment. He should have done better. And everybody told him afterwards that if he would have said, we're not going to do anything to him, everybody would have listened. But he said, let's sell him. So everybody listened and sold him. But the rest wanted to kill him, except Reuben. Reuben was somewhere else eating, and then he came back and saw that he was gone. But Reuben wanted to save him. Exactly. So Reuben wanted to save him. Yahudah wanted to save him, but didn't think it through as well. So he ended up selling him. Now, my point with that is that even though it was Yahudah who sold him, as we see here, the punishment for Yahudah was already mentioned. Yahudah sold him to save him from the Israelites, from the other brothers. And they agreed on selling the righteous for silver. And right after they sold him, they said, we should not buy anything of food or anything good with that money, because it was money of blood. So they decided to buy sandals with it, as we see in Genesis. They bought sandals to tread on that money, pretty much. And the poor for a pair of sandals. Joseph became a slave when they sold him. Slaves are poor. They own nothing. So they sold the poor in order to get some sandals. So we see here how this is referring, in a way, it happened in many other ways, and it continues to happen. But it started, we could say, with the literal selling of Joseph by the Israelites, which is a prophecy because it confirms the dreams of Joseph that would fulfill in the end times, when Yahweh is coming to punish that same sin on the Israelites, the many, which are the people, the many, who will reject the 2 witnesses. They will sell them and kill them, the 2 witnesses. Why? For a pair of sandals. Remember that the sandals represent the doctrine, because as we read in the previous book, Ephesians chapter 6, we read about the armor that we must put on, the spiritual one. And the sandals are the zeal to preach the good news. And like scripture says, that the feet, beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news on the mountains. Well, it says beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who preach the good news. So the feet represent the good news. The feet represent the end times. That's why, like I was saying regarding the beast with 2 feet, the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw was a statue of himself. Well, it represented all the kingdoms from Babylon, then Persia, then Greece, then Roman. And the feet had a mix of iron and clay. And that is the last kingdom, the kingdom of the beast. Those 10 toes represent the 10 leaders that will rule with the beast. So he is told that those 2 feet represent the world government of the end times. Just like the head in Hebrew is Rosh, it represents Reshit, beginning. The feet are the end. So Yahushua came in, well, close to the middle of history, of human history, to give us the doctrine that we should preach till the end, from that moment till the very end. So that's why the good news have to do with the end times. We should bring the good news to other people. That's why they are connected with the feet that we use to move, to bring messages to others. So the feet and the sandals connected to the good news, it's seen throughout the scriptures, but has many connections, like I'm saying, because they bought sandals. Now they will kill the 2 witnesses for what they preach, for their sandals, for their good news. That's also part of the reason why Yahushua washed the feet of the disciples. And many other parts, like when Yahushua says that we should shake the dust of our feet when somebody doesn't believe what we teach them. When we come out, even shake the dust, because the punishment that comes for them will be harsh. So the 2 witnesses will be killed because of what they preach, because of their sandals. For 3 transgressions of Israel, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they sell the righteous for silver. Somebody will get paid for the 2 witnesses fall. That's for sure. So much so that in Revelation 11, it says that they will give gifts to each other. We will have to see if that day when they are killed will become a feast day for the world because of the hate that they have for them at that moment. We will see if they turn it into a holiday, as they say, and that's why everybody will give gifts to each other, or if it is just those who are in charge of killing them who will be giving gifts to each other. Would be, I mean, both would be a fulfillment of that verse. So we'll have to see which one. So for 3 transgressions of Israel, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they sell the righteous for silver, like they sold Joseph. The last is a descendant of Joseph in the end times. And the poor for a pair of sandals. They will take everything from the 2 witnesses, kill them because of their doctrine, being they themselves the 2 feet, in a way, of the congregation, being Yahushua the head. 1 head, 2 feet. The first, the last, and Eliyahu. So once they have killed the first and the last, now the judgment will come, because the mercy gate, the door of mercy will be closed by the time they kill the 2 witnesses. So it says, and the poor for a pair of sandals, who crush the head of the poor ones in the dust of the earth. I mean, thinking about something. Who crush the head of the poor ones in the dust of the earth. So now look how pretty much puts the plural. And obviously, like I said, in history, this has happened in many ways, many times, sadly. But one fulfillment will be with the 2 witnesses. So now it makes it plural, just in case. And interesting that it says, who crush the head of the poor ones in the dust of the earth. Remember that the 2 witnesses won't be given burial. Their bodies will be left on that plaza where they will be killed, that street, and the people will be seeing them and mocking them for 3.5 days. So who crush the head of the poor ones in the dust of the earth and turn aside the way of the meek. Yahushua is the meek, and he is the way. His meekness is the way to be, but they turn aside from the true way, the way of Yahweh, when they reject the poor ones. And a man and his father go into the same girl to defile my set apart name. So even though they claim to be of the father, they do things that the father rejects. Both man and his father have relations with the same woman. Things that obviously, and sadly, once again, and I said, obviously, even though shouldn't be, but the fact that this type of behavior is kind of normal nowadays, or supported by many, just to be, as they would say, free, as they would say. Obviously, that is not true freedom. And a man and his father go into the same girl to defile my set apart name. And they lie down by every slaughter place on garments taken in pledge. And in the house of their mighty one, they drink the wine of those who have been fined. So look how, well, there's a big difference between the things that Yahweh has against Yahudim and then against Israel. This is like the third verse already of the things that Israel has done, and it's a lot of wickedness. So much so that Yahweh, so far, yeah, pretty much, he hasn't mentioned the Torah. They were so far away from the Torah that Yahweh didn't even mention it. He went straight to the sins that were obvious that they shouldn't commit. So, and a man and his father go into the same girl to defile my set apart name. And they lie down by every slaughter place, pretty much a place of sacrifice, on garments taken in pledge, and in the house of their mighty one, meaning they were following idols instead of Yahweh. They drink the wine of those who have been fined. Remember that to drink the wine of the whore, the great whore of Babylon, is what make them turn to the falsehood, because they end up drunk, spiritually speaking, and that is through idolatry, because they become like the idols they worship, their mighty ones. They drink the wine of those who have been fined. Yet I destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars. So he was a fallen one. He was a giant, pretty much. Remember also that I have mentioned how the Amorite, because of the meaning of Amor or Amar, to speak, it's pretty much, it means he who speaks. There's also the word Dabar, which is the word, and that is Mashiach. Also refers to speaking in Hebrew. But in the context of Dabar and Amar, in the context of the Amorites, when they appear as they are enemies, and because of the meaning of the name, they represent those of Lucifer. The Amorite would be Lucifer himself, in the sense that he is the accuser, the one who speaks against the people as an enemy. So, yet I destroyed the Amorite before them. So even though Yahweh came to destroy the accuser by dying on the cross for us, the people, Israel, continue to follow the false doctrine, rejecting the true Messiah. Yet I destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was as strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above and his roots from beneath. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above and his roots from beneath. This is interesting because we could say his roots are Samael, his fruit in the sense of what he's bringing, the coming of the false Messiah, Azazel. Through Mashiach dying, the three were condemned. It's just a matter of time for that condemnation to be completely fulfilled. And part of that time is when the two witnesses must come to continue the fulfillment of it. So, yet I destroyed the Amorite before them, which would be like saying that Mashiach, Yahweh through Mashiach, destroyed the accuser before them, for they saw the sacrifice, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was as strong as the oaks, just like the enemy was strong, for Yahweh gave him strength. And the strength that the accuser had against the people is the Torah. And the Torah is strong, for it is perfect and eternal. So that's why the enemy would use the Torah to accuse. And that's what made him strong. So that's how Mashiach had to come and fulfill the Torah in order to take it away from him who was misusing it, using it to accuse, for he couldn't save through it. Only Mashiach by coming as a man and fulfilling it. And I destroyed his fruit, what he was doing through that false doctrine, the fulfillment of the Torah according to the law, according to the letter. I destroyed his fruit from above and his roots from beneath. And I brought you up from the land of Mizraim. I brought you up from the land of Egypt, from the land of Egypt, and led you for 40 years through the wilderness to possess the land of the Amorites. So even though Yahweh did this, and we know that he mentions it a lot because obviously it's super important, but it also refers to the second Exodus, just like Yahweh redeemed the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, Yahushua came to redeem us from the slavery to the flesh, to sin. And there have been 2,000 years, as it is mentioned in here, 40 years in the wilderness. 2,000 years are 40 jubilees. So the same thing has happened. In fact, those 40 years were just a representation of the 40 jubilees that would happen from the first to the last, from the first manifestation of Yahweh on this earth to the last. So look how Yahweh is putting everything in order to also tell us how everything would happen in the end. First mention the nations, then he's mentioning Yahudah, then Yisrael, and now he's talking about what Yahushua did to Halel, being Halel represented here by the Amorite, the giant, the strong one. And I brought you up from the land of Mizraim. He's saying that right after saying that he killed the Amorite, yet he did that afterwards. My point is that always, as in a mirror, to show us the end, Yahweh is putting it in this order. And I brought you up from the land of Egypt and led you for 40 years, just like he has done for 2,000 years, 40 jubilees, through the wilderness, through the apostasy, to possess the land of the Amorite, to possess the world, which has been in the hand of the accuser, for he is the mighty one of this world. And I raised up some of your sons as prophets, and some of your young men as Nazarites. Not so, O you children of Israel, declares Yahweh. So even though they were acting that way, Yahweh would still raise up prophets and Nazarites, which are those who keep the rite, of the Nazir, which is to abstain from wine, from touching dead bodies, and from cutting the hair. And I raised up some of your sons as prophets and some of your young men as Nazarites. Not so, O you children of Israel, declares Yahweh. But you made the Nazarites drink wine. So they forced those who had made the vow to not drink wine, they were made to drink wine, breaking that covenant, and commanded the prophets, saying, do not prophesy. So Yahweh gives word to the prophets and tells them, tell this to the people. Yet the people said, do not prophesy. We don't want to hear it. Do not talk to us in the name of Yahweh. Do not talk to us about what Yahweh wants, because they wanted to hear what they wanted to hear, what their hearts were desiring. Just like nowadays, many false prophets, that's what they prophesy. That's what they say, because many times it's not even prophecy. They are just saying what people want to hear. But you made the Nazarites drink wine and commanded the prophets, saying, do not prophesy. And you see how it was just mentioning, and in the house of their mighty one, they drink the wine of those who have been fined. Now it's mentioning, but you made the Nazarites drink wine. Those who hadn't made a covenant with Yahweh, they made them turn to the idols, to the drinking of wine. Like I said, connecting it to wine of the whore, the wine of her abomination. This is also very interesting that Yahweh decides to mention the Nazarites, because Samson was or is the most famous Nazarite, right? And he was made to drink wine when he was celebrating a couple times, but one of those times was with Delilah, who gave him wine for him to spill the beans, pretty much, and tell him how he could be stopped. So, interestingly enough, that Nazir, Shimshon, is a representation of the descendant of Joseph, who comes through Ephraim. So we see that Yahweh is talking to Israel, connected to Ephraim. And he mentioned the selling of the righteous for silver and the poor for a pair of sandals, which connects with Joseph. Shimshon was like Joseph. The last comes and is born in the apostasy. So in a way, he is taught to drink the wine. So he falls in the apostasy, but then Yahweh reveals himself to him so that he comes out of it. My point is that it is interesting that Yahweh is mentioning this here after everything that he has said already that seems to be prophetical regarding the death of the two witnesses. But you made the Nazarites drink wine. So in a way, in general, those who have decided to give their lives to the Most High, they were seeking the truth, and they ended up in false doctrines where they gave them wine, where they gave them idolatry. So there are a lot of people who decided to give their lives to the Most High, yet they did not find the Most High because they went seeking in the wrong place where there was idolatry. Hope that's understood. And commanded the prophet, saying, do not prophesy. Just like the two witnesses, they will not want to hear them, and they would have been born drinking wine in the sense, the spiritual sense, what I just mentioned, right? In the apostasy, how we were all born, sadly. See, I am weighed down by you as a wagon is weighed down when filled with sheaves. This is like the fourth confirmation. So let me go to Genesis. Here it is. And Joseph dreamed a dream and told it to his brothers, so they hated him even more. And he said to them, please listen to this dream which I have dreamed. See, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field. And see, my sheaf rose up and also stood up. Kuma, which is the verb that is used to understand as prophecy of the fulfillment of these words through a descendant of Joseph when they appear in scriptures. And see, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. So now, after the fact that he's talking to the Israelites, to the fact that they sold Joseph, mentioned in the Nazarite as Shimshon, who was a representation of, now is mentioning the sheaves, right, during the harvest. But in this case, connecting it to the sin that they have. the fact that they do not want to bow down to Yahweh by accepting the doctrine that the last would bring. Obviously, being that the fact that Mashiach is Yahushua and none other. See, I am weighed down by you, as a wagon is weighed down when filled with sheaves, and a place to flee shall perish from the swift. This is amazing, because we know about the second Exodus, the time when Yahushua said, flee to the mountains, flee to the wilderness. When you see the abomination of desolation, of which Daniel spoke, flee to the mountains. But the many who rejected two witnesses, even if they realized too late that they were right, if they realize that they should flee, they won't find a place to flee, no matter how swift they may be, because of their previous decisions, of course, the rejection of the truth. And a place to flee shall perish from the swift, and the strong not fortify, his power, and the mighty not save his life. No matter how mighty they may be, no matter how powerful they may be, how rich or whatever, if they fortify their home, if they buy a bunker, whatever they do, they won't be able to save their life. So a lot of people trying to make money thinking that that's how they will save themselves, instead of doing good deeds and accepting the Most High and his way for him to protect. And that's why in that time, those who claim to be mighty, those who claim to be powerful, those who claim to be rich, and others who claim to they themselves have the power to save themselves, will realize they were wrong. Yet those who are humble enough to understand that there is a creator above them and respect them and want to do what he says will be protected by him. And he who handles the bow not stand, and he who handles the bow not stand, and the swift or foot not save, and the swift of foot not save, where we're just mentioning here, right? No matter how fast they may be to run, they won't run fast enough. And he who handles the bow not stand, and the swift of foot not save, nor he who rides a horse save his life. Running or on horse, nobody will be able to escape what is coming for them. Pretty much what is being said here. No matter what people do, they won't be able to escape the punishment that comes to those who reject the truth, who reject love, who reject the Creator. It's interesting that the last of whom seems to be speaking in this chapter a lot, in a way, is the one who comes riding on a horse with a bow, and they will kill him. So even that is fulfilled, but here he's talking about those of the other side, right? And the one potent of his heart among the mighty flee naked in that day, declares Yahweh. And the one potent of his heart among the mighty flee naked in that day. This is also interesting because remember in Mark, there is a interesting verse that says that there was a person following the Mashiach when they capture him. And when they try to capture that other person, he fled naked. He was only covered by like a mantle, and they took it trying to catch him, and he ran away. He ran away just like Joseph ran away from the wife of Potiphar when she was trying to get him to lay with her. So he left his clothes and ran away, just like that other young man in the time of Mashiach. When they were capturing Mashiach to kill them in rejection of the truth, there was a man who fled naked, which in a way fulfills this. and the one potent of his heart among the mighty flee naked in that day. And I say that because it is like saying in that day when they fulfilled it, somebody fled naked, and that's why Mark had to put it down. And like I said, it connects with Joseph, who fled naked from Potiphar. So that is, from the wife of Potiphar. So that is another connection. The fleeing naked, to the bow, to riding a horse, to the sheaves, Shimshon the Nazarite, or the Nazir, the pair of sandals, the righteous for silver, even Edom, sovereign, bones that are burned. So there were a lot of connections here. And not only to the last, of course, to the first, as we just saw with Kerioth, right? Yahudah ish Kerioth, who sold Mashiach, just like they sold Joseph, from whom we got the doctrine, and so on and so forth. So that's how that chapter ends.